Stephen Moore, the only hooker to have played over 100 tests. What was your why? What drove you?
I guess my why to start off with was just to get the best out of myself and to make the most of what I had. And I wasn't a great athlete at all. You either have the physical talent or you have a mental capability to be able to push yourself more than what you think you can.
How did you find that thirst for wanting to be better or wanting to be better than you are right now?
As a youngster, we were swimming all the time. We were playing rugby down the club. We were playing tennis. We were doing whatever we could to get outdoors, and we spent very little time inside. And I think that was a big foundation for my love of sport. That sort of built a bit of my work ethic and my understanding that to get what you want, you got to work hard.
Have you ever found yourself wondering what it really takes to be the exception amongst the exceptional? In this episode, we found out just how to do that. I sat down with Stephen Moore, ex-captain and the third most capped Wallaby in Australian rugby history, and we dug deep. From growing up in rural Queensland to leading the Wallabies at a World Cup final. His journey is about far more than sport. It's about resilience, leadership, and reinvention. If you've ever faced burnout, chased a dream, or wondered how champions transition into the real world, this episode is for you. All right, let's get into it. Stephen Moore, thank you so much for coming onto the show.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
You are the 796th person to represent the Wallabies. You're the 81st captain. You became the third most capped player ever in Australian rugby history, behind George Gregan and James Slipper. And importantly, and we'll talk about it, I want to touch on this later as well, the only hooker to have played over 100 tests. What is it like? And was your why? What drove you?
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't think I often think about all that stuff in one line like that, all those different stats. And often you hear about it if you're speaking at something or someone's introducing you. So, when I think about that, there is a sense of pride in what I've achieved, and a lot of hard work went into that. But I guess my why to start off with was just to get the best out of myself and to make the most of what I had. And I wasn't a great athlete at all. So I knew that was something I had to work really hard on. So, you either have the physical talent or you have a mental capability to be able to push yourself more than what you think you can for a long period of time. So I worked hard on both those things. So I tried to get the most out of my body and my physical assets. And then the second part was the mental toughness to continue to get up every day and try and be the best in the world. For my career, that was really what drove me was being as good as I could be and trying to be the best that I could be for my team, whatever it was, whether it was the Reds, Brumbies, Australia, University, my club in Brisbane. So I think overall it was that drive to be the best and to be the best version of myself that I could be, and that's what got me up every day.
On that, let's bring it back then and see where this sort of that desire came through for you. Born in Saudi Arabia, to Irish parents, and it was only when you were little they moved outside of Rocky. What was life in the bush for you as a kid, and what did your parents instill? Were they the ones that sort of, or was it a coach, or how did you find that thirst for wanting to be better or wanting to be better than you are right now?
Yeah, it's a good question because it is an interesting story, I suppose. My parents are both Irish and were working in the Middle East in the early 80s, and that's where I was born, in Saudi Arabia. So we went back to Ireland then when I was 2 for about 3 years. We lived in Galway on the west coast of Ireland. And then Dad got an opportunity. He was a GP, so a doctor, to come out to regional Queensland and biomedical practice in a little town called Mount Morgan, which is in central Queensland. It's a very famous gold mining town from back in the day, and not so active now anymore, but over history, it's been a very important town for Queensland and for Australia for a long time. So we landed in Mount Morgan. I was 5, so there was 4 of us under 4, myself and my 3 sisters and mum and dad. So, I mean, I was fine, but
hands full.
I was fine. I was 5. I could have been anywhere in the world, So for mum and dad, though, I think that would have been an enormous culture shock going from the west coast of Ireland to a little mining town in central Queensland. So I'm not sure how Dad came up with Mount Morgan as the place, but I think there was really good opportunities and incentives for people to move to regional Queensland at the time, and he went for it. And it was just a wonderful place to start our journey in Australia. I think lots of open space. We lived across the road from the swimming pool, the rugby club, the tennis courts. Everything was there for us, and I think I was so lucky to have that early in my life. So, as a youngster, we were swimming all the time. We were playing rugby down the club. We were playing tennis. We were doing whatever we could to get outdoors, and we spent very little time inside. And I think that was a big foundation for my love of sport. I think swimming probably initially was the big driver. We had a very good swimming coach in Mount Morgan. It was a weird setup. It was a 30-meter pool, which is very unusual, right?
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever seen one since. So our training would always be 60 metres, 120 metres. So we're always training a little bit further than everyone else. So when we went to the competition, we were winning everything. So
Right.
that pool became known as a place that bred
Interesting.
really good swimmers. So we trained really hard. We got up early and we trained late, and I think that sort of built a bit of my work ethic, I suppose, and my understanding that to get what you want, you got to work hard. That's the foundation. A lot of people these days sort of search for silver bullets and magic formula or whatever it might be for success, but hard work is the foundation of it to start with. You know, you can't do much without that being the basis, and then beyond that, you build your tools outside. So that was a big part of my childhood, was working hard. And I guess my parents too instilled that in me in the classroom, you know, so I always had a balanced approach to sport and my education at that stage of my life, and after that then work. I think that's really important to the success of both of those comes from the balance that you have in your life. And I was lucky to have, you know, parents, coaches, people around me that gave me that direction and just really reinforced to me how important it was to have that balance.
And with your folks from Ireland, and that's a very strong rugby country as well, is that where the pathway in junior rugby started?
Not really, actually.
Okay.
So my mum's family mostly played Gaelic football and hurling. They're the two biggest sports in Ireland. For people that haven't seen it, Gaelic football and hurling are the two Gaelic games, and they're an amateur sport still to this day, but they are by far and away the biggest sports in Ireland. So you might have seen hurling with the sticks and the ball, and it's a bit of a crazy sport, but those sports is what everyone plays growing up. Rugby's always been there, and football as well is massive. But it wasn't really till I arrived in Australia and the rugby club was at the end of the street. As I said, that's where I started. I went down to play at Mount Morgan Rugby Club and under sixes, bare feet, running around on Saturday morning. And we used to get on the bus to go to Rockhampton every Saturday morning and play against all the clubs in Rocky. And that was my first taste of rugby, you know. So, you know, I just played for the love of it as a kid, running around central Queensland. You know, there wasn't never in my wildest dreams that I think I'd be doing it for a living or for a career down the track. And, you know, I often talk about that to young kids, that you don't have to map it out from an early age. You just got to work hard and be hungry, and, you know, things will happen.
Yeah. There's a bit about in that, I think, in the sense that it's the application of hard work, no matter what direction you're going in, is the important piece. Because you'll end up somewhere that you never expected to. But in any event, the hard work needs to occur.
Yep.
So if you can instill that right in the kids, and as a parent as well, to be able to say, look, you might not want to do clarinet for the rest of your life, but you need to work hard at it, because that piece is the important piece.
That's right, and you can apply that to every aspect of your life, really, and you always have to get really good as a parent or a coach at how you communicate that to your kids, to your students, to your athletes in your team. That can be communicated in many different forms, and I think that's part of the skill of coaching or being a parent, is how you get that message across in a way where it's going to be received in the right way. And hard work ethic can sometimes have a bit of a sharp edge to it, but it's not really meant to be like that. So no matter what you're talking about, how do you craft it in a way that you can get it across to your audience, I think is part of the skill.
And then going into schoolboy, you become a boarder.
Yep.
At the Rism Grammar School. Was that a step up for the rugby in a rugby program for you, coming from Rockhampton?
It was definitely a step up. Yeah, I remember coming down to the boarding house from Rockhampton, and it seemed like Brisbane was just such a big place. You know, I thought
at 13.
Yeah, and it took me a while to adjust to boarding life. It was the first time I'd lived away from home. I miss my family, all that kind of stuff. My mum, since I was a baby, would have taken me to everything I needed to be at. So swimming, rugby, all around central Queensland and beyond. So to change that was a big change, but it was one of the best things that ever happened to me. Being part of the boarding community, met some wonderful people, both as mates and teachers and boarding masters, and that whole boarding community was just such a great environment to be part of, and I just immersed myself in that way of life, and got stuck into lots of different sports. I wasn't a great rugby player. I think I came into the B's or C's when I was in year 9 in the boarding house, so I wasn't a supreme athlete. I still did lots of swimming. I loved playing cricket. And obviously rugby. So I try to keep, once again, a really balanced approach through school, and then focus as well on music and my studies
Academics,
as well. Yeah, the academic stuff for me was the reason why you're there, right? So trying to really give it a good crack academically, and once again, it was a great environment. The foundations were there for us to work hard.
Yeah.
On and off the field, as they say, so that we got a really good education to supplement our co-curricular stuff.
So going even into senior, is this idea in circulating in your head about going full-time or opening that door and trying to think maybe I could do this as a profession?
I was in the first 15, but I wasn't a star player. I think I got selected for GPS 2 representative team, and then I got picked in the Queensland Schoolboys, as a bit of a surprise, I suppose. So there was no way I was thinking about playing professionally at school. That wasn't even entering my mind. I was just there to make a contribution, play with my mates, have fun, represent your school is one of the best things that you get to do, no matter what area it's in. So I think it wasn't until I left school and went to university and I played at UQ that I started to take it a little bit more seriously.
Because it is 5 years or thereabouts, 5.5 years from when you leave school to when you represent the country.
Yeah.
What does that 5 years look like?
Yeah, that was pretty crazy. It was my second year of Colts, which is under 19 rugby for university, that we had a great team. I think there was half a dozen of us that ended up playing for Australia in that one under 19 team. So we had an undefeated season, and then a bunch of us got contracts with the Queensland Reds to come and join their squad full time. And that was a trigger. Then at the time, I was still studying full time at uni, studying biomedical science, with a view to maybe going on studying medicine beyond that. So that was my sort of plan. And then this contract came up. It was a full-time contract, and I thought, I spoke to my parents and a few other people, and I thought, well, this is an opportunity that I've got to take and try and make the most of. And away I went then. I started training full-time. I didn't really play Super Rugby for the first couple of years. I was mostly just playing club for university, but once again, we had a really good team. We did very well. And I started to get a few games for Queensland, and then Eddie Jones, who was the Wallaby coach at the time, invited me in to train with the Wallabies. I went on a few tours to Europe with the team, but once again didn't play. And then it was 2005, which was the year that I played my first test.
Let's get there. Take me back to when you get told what is it like to put that jersey on and run out?
It's hard to explain. When you're that age, I was 20, 22, getting told you made the team, you're going to come off the bench on Saturday and play your first test. It feels like a long time ago now, so it's hard to actually remember how I felt exactly. But there was a lot of pride, a lot of nerves. I remember sitting on that bench in that test match, just being so nervous that I wouldn't let anyone down. That I'd go out there and I would be. I'd be worthy of being in the team, doing my job really well, making a contribution, so that my teammates thought, this guy belongs here. So I think that's probably the overriding feeling that you get. You just don't want to, you want to make the most of it, So I think that's what I was trying to do. Thankfully, I think we won 70-0 or 72-0 or something, so it wasn't a close game. And when I went on, I think we were up by 40 or 50 points. So we played Samoa in Sydney, and then I got presented my cap after the game. which was an unbelievable moment. Your friends and family in the crowd, you remember at those times the people that helped you get there, your family, key coaches and key mentors you had throughout the journey.
Mm-hmm.
That sort of stuff comes flooding back a little bit, and there's a lot of emotion there, and so it should be. It's such a great opportunity and privilege to get that chance to play for your country. That it's something I never took for granted, even though I got to do it a lot of times. Not once did I ever take it for granted.
We talked about at the top of the show that there isn't a hooker who has more than 100 caps. What's unique about that position? I mean, a lot of the listeners won't be rugby centric.
Yeah.
What is it about that position, and what does it demand of someone physically and mentally? Because it's such a technical position, I guess even comparatively. So you could argue to the other positions on the field. And what is it like doing it at that highest level?
I always enjoyed playing hooker because there's a lot of responsibility. You play a big role in the team, throwing the line outs, being in the middle of the scrum. They're two big jobs in the team, and if they go well, the team generally functions well. So I liked having that responsibility and trying to own that and trying to refine my skills in that area. So I think if you don't like that, it's not the position for you. You when you're throwing the line out, you feel like you're the only person on the field at times, particularly when you're away from home. You might be in South Africa or Eden Park in Auckland or somewhere like that. And you just think everyone's looking at me, and most people in this crowd are hoping that I make a hash of this.
Yeah.
And that takes some mental strength and some practice. And, once again, I was very lucky to have some wonderful coaches early in my career that taught me the skill, the motor skills of throwing, of line-out throwing, but also the mental skills required to be able to throw under pressure and how you handle if things don't go well. And I had some great teammates as well that helped me with that. So
because you might be having a dozen lineouts in a game, and you could be in the 70-minute mark, and you're fatigued, and it's close, and it's like it is.
Yeah.
You're on the 22 and you're almost there, and you just have to throw this perfectly.
Yeah.
And then if you don't, what was instilled in you to be able to just reset and keep playing and let that bad episode, that bad moment in a game go away?
Yeah, it was something that I didn't master straight away. It took me a long time to get used to operating under that pressure. But when I did, I think it was a case of just trying to move on quickly. So trying to park something that had happened, and you can't influence things that are already done. So how can I influence what's not done? So how am I going to approach the next opportunity I get? And if I think about the line out, there's the lifters, the jumpers, there's the opposition, there's the referee, there's the weather, there's the crowd. There's lots of variables in there. And I just thought, well, I've just got to get my part right. So how do I do that? What's my technique? What's my routine? And if I execute that, if I do what I've been practicing, then there's a good chance it'll go where it needs to go. And if I do that, then if it doesn't go well, then I've done my part. So that's how I sort of addressed it. I know you have to be a bit compartmental with this stuff. Like you have to be able to package up disappointment and just put it away to one side and move on quickly in the moment, because you could lose 10 lineouts in a row and then still have a lineout to win the game that you need to nail. Might be to win a championship or a big game away from home. Might be raining, all that kind of stuff. You might have people that are injured, so you've got people on the field that don't normally jump. All that kind of stuff can happen. You got to be able to nail it at that time. So
you've said in the past that your young childhood was Steve Waugh. Your childhood hero was Steve Waugh. Did that progress to rugby? And was it Phil Kearns, or who did you look up to?
Well, definitely Steve Waugh was, to talk about him a little bit. So when I grew up in Rocky, cricket, I love cricket from a young age. I know coming from Ireland, we didn't really play cricket. So it was a new sport for me. But I think the way the Australian team played and how they represented Australia formed, a lot of my sort of pride in our country and how I then took that on and that responsibility on when I was in that position. So it was a little bit of a weird moment that I got to be on the other side of it. But yeah, I just liked how Steve Waugh played, his mental toughness, the way he carried himself. Some of the innings he played under massive pressure. I remember reading his World Cup diaries as a kid and taking a lot away from that. So that always stayed with me. In a rugby sense, we probably followed Ireland more than Australia when we first landed in the country. So there was an Irish hooker called Keith Wood who was a wonderful player for a long time, and he probably would be someone that I followed when I was a kid. I watched him play a lot. He was a really good athlete, did stuff a little bit out of the box, but still very good set piece and a very good line-out thrower. So I followed him a lot, and then as I went through, probably, and it sounds strange, Ben Tune was a winger for the Wallabies when I was growing up, and I just loved the way he competed. He never let anyone get the better of him. He always went 100%. A lot of the time it cost him because he had a lot of injuries, and I think a lot of that was because he just went so hard. But he was someone to me who epitomised what it meant to play for Australia. I remember him marking Jonah Lomu one time, and he did a great job on him. He cut him down a few times, and then later in life, Jonah, in his book, he actually called out Ben Tune as one of the toughest players he ever played against. And, when I read that, I thought, I could see that because when you watch Tuney play and how hard he played and how much it meant to him, I think even though he was a winger and I was a front rower, that resonated with me a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, that's amazing. And I find that it's I from a person in the grandstand, I could see whether it was intentional or not. I can see a lot of similarities between how you led and how Steve Waugh led, and I don't know whether whether that was just instilled literature as a kid and you just had that in yourself. That's the way you would lead, but it is. I found it when I heard that he was your childhood hero. It was like it wasn't it's coincidental or not, but it's there's a lot of similarities there.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, I guess that's how you form your own habits and the things that you think are important is all the influences that you've had from a very early age, whether it's your parents, your coaches, your teachers, the heroes, the posters you've got up in the wall. I always used to say to my teammates, there is kids out there watching everything we do and they will replicate it. So whether it's on the field or off the field, just remember that we are role models. I hear a lot of talk about athletes aren't role models, but the reality is that we are, right? Anytime you're in the public domain and people are watching what you do, kids who are impressionable, they're going to copy that, right? So we want to make sure that that's a good thing that we're portraying. And I guess I took that all into my career. And one thing I always tried to focus on was my own performance, my own preparation, things that I could control, because that all goes into being a good leader. I think is being well organised, being well prepared, and on top of your own game and your own preparation, so that when you're asking other people to do it, that you're able to do it yourself.
Talk to me then in 2014, the day that you were told, or that the events that led up to being given the captaincy, and what must have been a roller coaster day of your first match. As a captain.
Yeah, it was. If I think back probably 2 weeks before the game, Ewan McKenzie, who was the coach at the time, gave me a call and he said, I want you to come to Sydney. I want to catch up with you. And I said, okay. Got on the plane in the morning and he said, we'll meet at Krispy Kreme's at Sydney Airport. And I thought, geez, that's a weird place to meet. So I got off the plane and I walked down the street there to Krispy Kreme's just outside Sydney Airport, and Ewan was sitting there and we had a coffee, and that's where he asked me to be the Wallaby captain, Krispy Kreme. So, I didn't have a donut or anything like that. It was just coffee on both sides, and that was it. So, I was an emotional day. I thought I'm very honoured to be asked to do the role. I've been in the team for quite a long time. Played, I think it was. I might have played 80 tests at that point already, so I've been around. But to get that opportunity was, it meant a lot to me. Obviously, even when I wasn't captain, I took it really seriously, representing my country. And that was it. So I flew back then. We went into camp ahead of our first test, which was against France at Suncorp Stadium. So ran out in front of my friends and family, home ground. And it must have been the first tackle of the game, or second tackle of the game. I got my leg caught under a tackle, I think it was Scott Fardy and myself tackled one of the French back rowers and just my leg buckled underneath. And I knew straight away I'd done something bad. I'd never done a bad knee injury before, but I could tell it wasn't good. Got up and started to try and run it out, but it just felt really unstable. And Peter Myers, who is a very well-known orthopaedic surgeon, was at the game, and he came into the shed straight away to see me. And he did the test, the ACL test that they do, and he told me straight away that it was gone. So that was it. I thought that would be the end of my Wallaby captaincy. Michael Hooper was coming through. He would then take on the captaincy for the rest of that year, 2014. And I got in the car before halftime and was driven to the X-ray place to have a scan, and that confirmed everything. I had surgery on the Monday. And then that was it for the rest of the year. So I was in rehab. I was back down to Canberra for my long rehab.
How were you mentally?
In that initial period, I was pretty broken, I suppose. But the way I handled it, I just tried to have perspective, So I just remember sitting in the hospital there and watching the news, and can't remember what was happening at the time, but it was something really bad, right, globally, and I just thought, you know what, I've hurt my knee playing sport. I'm going to get better. I'm not going to, I'm still here. My wife was having our second child in a couple of months from then. So, I had a lot of good stuff in my life that I was very lucky to have and a lot to be happy about. So that really helped me get through that initial period. I really tried to have that perspective, and that is hard sometimes because it's your whole world, that you're in. But that really did help me get through. And then I had a really good rehab, great support at the Brumbies from the coaching staff and the strength and conditioning staff down there that got me through a really high quality rehab to be able to get back on the field early 2015 with the Brumbies and play that season out. And, we had a good season, and I think I played pretty well. And then after that, Michael Checker was the coach. So Ewan McKenzie had left the team. Michael Checker had come in and taken over the team, and I thought, well, he was coaching Michael Hooper at the Waratahs, so I was prepared for him to just continue on as the captain, and I would have been more than supportive of that. But Check then asked me to jump in and take the reins again, be the captain again. So, that again felt like a new beginning for me after that sort of false start. 2015, to be able to lead that team and with so many great players and great people was a big honour for me. And, we nearly went all the way, but we just fell short.
That was the captaincy for the 2015 World Cup campaign. What was the and that was in England. What was the expectation? What was the goals in that team under your leadership?
Well, it was interesting because we had it was an abbreviated Tri-Nations back then, or Four Nations, I can't even remember, but we won that. We beat New Zealand in Sydney that year. The 2015 Super Rugby, I can't even remember. 2014, the Waratahs had won. We were in the final 2013. So we had a strong core of players that were playing at
the foundations were good for the country.
Yeah, we had a really high quality side. We would have had half a dozen or more world-class players in our team. So we're in a pretty good spot. So we felt pretty confident, but we had a very tough pool. So we had England, Wales and Fiji in our pool. England were the host of the World Cup. So, for anyone that doesn't know, England typically is the home of rugby. Twickenham, where the final was held, that's where England play. So a lot of pressure on them to perform. And before the World Cup, we had a 2-week camp at Notre Dame University in the US. So great facilities, like unbelievable. We only used the hockey facilities. We weren't allowed to go near the football gym or anything like that, but amazing camp. We spent a lot of time together just sharpening the pencil about what we wanted to do. And, I firmly came out of that camp, and I think most of the players did, thinking that we could win the World Cup. And we were going to England. We were flying in to win the World Cup. That was what we were doing. And we went through the pool stages, and people thought, oh, are they good enough? And we beat Fiji, we beat Wales, we beat England at Twickenham. That's probably one of the best games that I've been part of in my career, just from a memory point of view. So beating the home nation at their own home ground to progress
on this path. Yeah.
Yeah, so that was a real buzz that night, and then we played Scotland in the semis. That was a very close game. We got away with it at the end, but we still won the game. And then we beat Argentina in the semi, and then here we are playing the All Blacks, who were the best team in the world by a mile. You know, they had, you go through their team from that era, probably some of the best players
Carter,
of all
McCall.
time. Yeah, well, I mean, it's a long list.
Yeah.
Conrad Smith,
Yeah.
Martin Onu, Sam Whitelock, Brodie Retallick, Jerome Kino. I mean, every player in that team, I'd say, would be in the conversation to be, you know, the best player that New Zealand's had in their position. You know, so very, very strong team. But once again, we had a firm belief that we were going to go and win the game, and we gave it a good crack. You know, it was seesawing. We hung in there in the second half. You know, they had some subs come on that we had a few injuries. Few things, you know, didn't go our way, but that's what happens in World Cup finals. You know, you need everything to go your way the whole time, and they were just too good, you know. So at the end of that game, you know, hand on heart, you just say that they were a better team. So we gave it everything. I was really proud of how we played. I remember during that week, actually, the Sydney Opera House, they put the Wallaby logo with the gold on the sails, and yeah, someone put it up I think Czech might have put it up at our team meeting, and you know that hit a lot of the guys hard in terms of the impact that we were having on people back home. And I think that hit a lot of the guys in general in terms of the impact that we could have on people's lives. Whenever you're playing for your country, no matter what you're doing, representing your country, you have the ability to change people's lives and make people proud and happy, and that's a pretty cool thing to be able to do. So, you know, we all took that really seriously. That was a wonderful journey that we went on together. We just fell short, which that'll be with us all forever. But you know, I'll try and remember the good parts of it.
How was the group afterwards? Because if everyone's sharing that position of, well, we've done the absolute best that we can do, and we were just beaten by a better team, there's some solace to that.
Yeah. I mean,
it must also really sting.
Yeah. I mean, we spent so much time together in those, might have been 5 months really, when you think about how that whole period we were together so much. And then after the final, everyone just, you know, you fly home and everyone scatters. It's finished, you know. So there's a huge hole there.
Yeah. Huge letdown.
Yeah, big letdown. Like you're back at home and you got to mow the lawn again, and your kids are around and you're like, geez,
go and get some milk from the shop.
It's all over.
Yeah.
So yeah, there was a big lull there, and we probably carried that into the next season. I think England came out, then Eddie Jones became the England coach. They came out and beat us 3-0 at home, and I still think we were suffering from that World Cup hangover. You know, we just, as a team, we put so much mental energy into that effort that guys were just gassed. I think, I think mentally and physically they were just a little bit spent. So I think good learning for Rugby Australia, and how you manage teams post World Cups.
So I'm sure. I mean, if my own little experience is anything to go by as well, that if you're so focused on high performance for a particular goal, there's nothing else after that. It's we'll organize that later.
Yeah.
That's irrelevant to, you're so focused to achieving this huge outcome.
Yep.
There's anything outside past that is wasted energy. And I wonder whether that's the same for you guys, in the sense that that's all there was.
Yeah, I've got no doubt. And I think we're still learning about how to manage that, the mental game, I think, a lot. I think other countries, New Zealand being one of them, are probably ahead of us in managing the mental side. Like, they've had a mental skills coach, psychologists, sort of resources around the team for a couple of decades now, really. And, a lot of that comes from their performance in the 2007 World Cup, where they got knocked out by France in the quarterfinal as the favourites. And the come down after that, and the feeling across New Zealand in general that was such a big loss for them. And how do they build themselves back up to become the best team in the world? So Yeah, there's a lot that has to go into that, and we probably we left that a little bit to chance, I think, through that period, so that when we arrived back in 2016, there was a lot of scars there still to be patched up, you know.
Yeah.
So, I think the union learnt from that, and they've probably put more resources around the team now in that space. And I think in any team, not just sport, but the mental side of whatever profession you're in, and people's mental health and well-being needs to take up more time of the leadership, discussion in order to make sure you cater for that part of your business and the requirements of your staff in that space. I think it's become a lot more complicated than it probably once was. COVID, I think, has allowed us to probably, mix work and life a little bit more than probably what was previous. So now you have a bit more understanding about what some people have got going on in their life, not just at work. And I think that's a good thing. But it means that we have to dedicate more resources and time to talking about it and to supporting people.
Yeah, and I think on that point, the idea that any team revolves around the people, and we are all just human, and our own experiences are so unique, and what we've got going on in our life is obviously extremely different to the next person in the team. And by opening that up and showing that to everyone, you say it can only be a good thing.
Yeah, I think so. And once again, coming back to that 2015 side, we took a lot of time to get to know each other away from rugby. So everyone put their family trees up, and we get to know, where people had come from. We learned that, faith, food, music, and family were the four big things that a lot of people connected with. So we spent more time getting to know how those things worked within a particular culture or within a particular individual. And that really allowed us to show people that we cared for each other, that we took time to understand, well, what's important to you is important to me, is important to them. And we spent time on actively working on that, so that wherever we went around the world, we catered for the requirements of the team. And that's something we probably took for granted before that. You just think that everyone thinks the same, prepares the same, is motivated. You put the Australian flag up on the wall, and what does it mean to people? They might not even be born. I wasn't born in Australia. Half our team weren't born in Australia. It doesn't mean they weren't proud to play for our country, but different people are motivated by different things, and you've got to understand that as a leader.
Hey guys, just popping in with a gentle reminder. If you're enjoying this episode, we'd love it if you'd give it a like, hit subscribe, and leave a comment with your thoughts. It's free, and it really helps us grow and continue to share these stories that matter. Cheers. Let's pivot then and talk to me about the decision to finish up your professional career and how easy that came for you, or how challenging that was.
Well, it was very challenging, but then it was really easy. So I'll sort of explain that a little bit. I remember talking to Mike Hussey somewhere along the line, and it might have been around the time he was retiring, and he said to me, look, once you think about retiring, you should probably do it. That was his view.
He retired at the top as well.
Yeah. And there's a lot to be said for that, I suppose. I remember we were at a camp, 2016, I think it was, at a camp in Newcastle, Wallaby camp. And I woke up one day. We were doing a lot of contact at training, a lot of tackling, scrums, all that. And I woke up and I just said, I think I'm done. I can't do it anymore. I'm really not looking forward to training. I can't picture myself taking my body to where I needed it to go to. The young guys are coming through. And I spoke to my wife about it, and I said, I'm going to go and tell Czech that I'm retiring. So I did.
One morning.
Yeah.
That conversation with your wife hadn't occurred prior, or you were?
Yeah, a little bit. I said, geez, I'm finding it hard to get myself going. And through my career, I was always somebody that, I thought it was important, and I agreed with that. Train hard, play hard, sort of. You want to train above intensity that you want to play at. There's no way you can train below it and expect to play above it. So we always trained really hard, and particularly at the Brumbies, that was a big focus. Train above where you want to play. So that was the mindset, and I couldn't do that anymore. My body was starting to shut down. I was taking longer to recover. And I thought, oh, that might be time to give it away. And I just was having regular thoughts about that. And so I spoke to courts and I said, I think I'm going to tell Check that I'm going to finish up. And I did. I remember just going and pulling him aside in the hotel there in Newcastle. And
not the Dunkin' Donuts or the...
No, it wasn't a Krispy
Kremes.
No.
Yeah.
It's at the Crown Plaza there on the harbour in Newcastle. And I said, Check, I think I'm done, mate. I'm gonna retire. I think I've given it everything I've got, and I don't think I can commit any longer. And he was great. You know, he said, mate, it's it was disappointing, but I get it. You know, he was never someone I don't think that would. Yeah, he believed what I was saying. He knew that I didn't come out of nowhere. I'd been thinking about it, and I felt it was the right time to hand over the reins to the next generation to take the jersey on and go for it. You know, so I still had a year left on my contract. So, but that wasn't really something I thought about much. I just thought this is the right time. And on the flip side, I had some mentors that helped me transition from rugby into life after, and I was starting to have conversations with them about what opportunities would look like, you know, if I retired. And coming back to when I spoke to Mike Hussey, I thought, you know, I'm starting to think and talk about retirement too much here. Like, it's time to retire.
You're trying to hold on to the next rope before letting go of the other one.
That's right, exactly. And I couldn't go out there and give everything physically and mentally to the national team whilst half thinking about life after. I just wasn't comfortable in that space, you know. So I did that, and then I moved on and retired. So then I started to think about, well, what do I do now? I've got to get a real job after 15 years playing rugby. So
how did you go about was there any period of time after that when you did retire formally? Did you have sort of like an identity crisis or any issue that because people look at you and they say, you know, you're the Australian Wallabies captain, Stephen Moore, whereas obviously for you, you're just Steve, who plays rugby.
Sure.
Was there challenges in that?
Yeah, massively. Yeah, and I've talked to a lot of the other players about this. I know it is a big issue in all elite sport when you commit so much of yourself to something for so long, and then that's no longer there. It takes a long time to move on, I think, you know. So, and I count myself lucky to have had some great people around me to give me guidance about come and have a look at what we're doing in this business. You know, here's an opportunity. So I was lucky to get that opportunity, but I still, you know, you're not running out there in front of 80,000 people. You're not pulling on the national jumper, you know, playing for your club, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and I guess also your scope of, like, you're no longer trying to be the best in the world at something.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
you know, which is, and now you're trying to be the best. I mean, initially you got into ag, but you're just trying to lead a small team in a small jurisdiction, you know, in Queensland or wherever, and that bit must be, I guess, humbling.
Yeah, definitely. And I still find that a challenge, you know, because the first couple of years, well, the first year out of retirement was almost a novelty because my body was recovering. I was feeling really good. I was doing some new stuff, so it was pretty cool being in a corporate environment because I've never done it before. But the second year, then I felt that was harder, you know, because that was it. Then I'm like, I'm done. That's never going to happen again, and I had to come to terms with that. I remember going in my first year to a meeting at a conference. There's about 20 people around the table, and I was there with my employer, which was a large cattle business. And I think they thought I was the guest speaker, you know, so they were sort of
like... Are you keynoting to that?
Yeah, they were like, oh, are you speaking at lunchtime or something? And I said, no, I'm actually here with NAPCO and I'm working there now. And they were great. I mean, but there was a lot of that kind of thing in that first year. Well, you know,
what are you doing?
Do you still play? Or, I mean, even now I get the odd person say, are you still playing? I mean, I've been retired for 8 years, so it does take time. And I suppose after that first couple of years, I became a lot more comfortable that part of my life would always be a big part of this part of my life, if you know what I mean. So in the first couple of years, I really tried to create separation. Like that's done.
Yeah.
I don't want to talk about it. I don't. I'm not that person. I'm this person. I'm now the life after the corporate person. There's no in between. And I've become a lot more comfortable now in the fact that that will forever be a big part of my life, and I'm actually very proud of that. And what can I take from that to help what I'm doing now?
Yeah.
And that I've become much more comfortable in that space, and it does take time, because it's a public thing. It's a very it's emotional. You put so much of yourself into that kind of thing that it does take you time to sort of find yourself again afterwards. And I certainly empathise with all athletes that go through that, and particularly those that are in sports where we were very lucky because rugby's a commercial enterprise. It's on TV. There's an audience. There's commercial drivers which allow the players to get remunerated pretty well. So, but the sports where that's not the case, and they give just as much time and sometimes more in really tough conditions. Yeah, I really I empathise with them then having to make the transition into life after, because you really are starting again. So for us, we were lucky because we had opportunities to maybe buy a house or set ourselves up a little bit before we then go into the next chapter. But that's not the case for everyone. So it's something we need to continue to keep an eye on, is that whole interface between professional sport or elite sport and what people are doing afterwards. So I know there's some great organisations now that specialise in helping people on that journey. But I'd ask everyone out there, if you do have the opportunity to link up with an elite athlete that has given a lot to something over a long period of time, then take the time to at least catch up with them and maybe see what they've got to offer.
As you sort of so beautifully sort of put, in the sense that you're now embracing the lessons and the experience that you had as an athlete in a leadership role. What has worked and what hasn't worked? What's been, I guess, what are the good and the bad of moving from captaining the Wallabies, or just having a leadership role in an organisation, to going out into corporate life?
Yeah, there's a lot of similarities, but there's probably more differences, I think. So I think having that awareness that it's not just a rinse and repeat type exercise, it's very different, both the environment and the type of leadership. And I guess I'm continuously trying to learn what that looks like, and learn from people that I'm around, and my boss, any mentors that I've got, about what good leadership looks like. And I think that's just an ongoing journey, isn't it? But at the end of the day, I think having your own standards and habits really down pat sort of transcends both. Making sure that well prepared, well recovered, all that kind of stuff is still important today, like it was 20 years ago. So that's a big focus, and I think probably the thing I've spent more time trying to get better at and get an understanding of is building probably the emotional side, the empathy, that whole understanding a whole person more than just the person at work is really important, I think, in the modern leadership sort of domain.
Or what they can do for the business versus who they are as a human.
Yeah, that's right. And I think if you want to get that discretionary effort out of people, you need to take the time to understand what's their backstory, what are they motivated by, what's their life situation, without, being too personal about it. It's how do you understand the person, therefore get the best out of them in your team, So that's become an interesting area for me, I think, as a team. And the other bit I'm really passionate about is building capability and building leadership. So the whole command and control, where there's one person in charge of the whole team, that in my opinion, that's gone. That doesn't really exist like it used to. So identifying people at all levels of the organisation that have leadership capabilities, and maybe they might not have a title, but they might still be a leader. So how do you identify that and continue to grow that? Give people opportunity to make decisions, not being afraid to fail, all that kind of stuff within your organisation, because really then the organisation can continue to grow and thrive independent of one person or two people or whoever's at the top. So, and you have to do that, particularly in a business where we've got offices now all around Australia and around the world. So we don't have a choice. You have to build capability at the ground level in order for the organisation to keep going forward. So, yeah, investing a lot of time and effort in how you go about that, giving the team the right level of support, but still the right level of autonomy to be able to make decisions and keep pushing forward. So, yeah, that's something we're spending a lot of time on. I think every leader should be thinking about that, because no matter if it's in sport and business, the team with the most leaders usually wins, right? And leadership isn't a title; it's behaviours and actions. That's what it is. So if you can have more people in your team that are leading than not, that's a really good place to be.
Yeah, I love that. And I've heard previously you've spoken about that you are like an action-based leader as well. And I think with your time in with the Wallabies and leading all the clubs as well, you've developed that skill to be the very best hooker that you can be, and then that's an example to the rest of the team. This is how I go about my day. Then you bring in that soft skill, like you said, where you in the lead up to that World Cup, that you're learning about who they are, not just how they throw a ball or how they push a scrum, right? But going into whether it's cattle, whether it's finance or insurance, like with BMS, you're now in a place where I guess you don't have to be the very best person. Like your tool on the trade, your coalface work isn't necessary, and it is developing that soft skill approach that helps people to be the very best that they can be. That's your job.
Yeah.
Not necessarily to be the very best person to do a particular job within the company, to achieve the outcome. How have you found then, particularly for BMS, and the issue that you've talked about, and I accept that in the sense that you to get the most out of the discretionary, what do you call it, the discretionary
effort.
Yep. You need to know them. You're right.
Yep.
You need to get to know them, understand as the empathy, the human. How do you do that as the team grows? Because you can do that with 10, 12, 13 people, but if you get to, you can't. Is it the case that you just need to know, you need to just be aware of how 40 people operate, or is that becomes a different beast?
Yeah, it's a different type of leadership, I think. And if you think about organisations that might have 10,000 staff, right? If you're the CEO, how do you make sure that the culture is getting through to the first day person who's working in a different city or a different country? So that's complex. But in a team like ours, I think you do need to try and take time to get around to people, and for some it might not be every day, but it could be every week or every couple of weeks where you're actually connecting with your team, and that's really important. I think before I got a leadership role in sport, I was really solely focused on my performance, right? I'd spend a lot of time thinking about how can I go out here and play really well. That's if I do that, then
that's my job.
That's my job, exactly. So as soon as you become the captain, you're thinking about, well, how do I get everyone to play well, including myself? Because I still need to do my job really well, if that's my standard. But then if we all do that, and I'm the captain, then hopefully we'll go well. So it's a little bit like that. I think you just have to allocate more of your headspace to the rest of the team, all at the same time. So you're thinking, who are the key people in the team that influence and that can show the way through their actions or through the way they lead or through their empathy or the way they connect, away from work, or who are the key people in the office or the team that can do that. And then when you do that, have I captured everyone in the team? Is everyone going to be catered for here, in some way? So as the leader, if I think about our CEOs in Sydney, he's got to have that trust in the people around the country that are leading the different businesses, that what I'm communicating is the company culture is the right stuff that is getting permeated through our office, and that when they come to visit, that they can just walk in and it feels like, they've always been there, sort of thing. So I think that's the skill, but also the complex part of leadership is, and that's where you get the magic, right? Because most organisations, most people operate just at the standard, and that's fine. There's a lot of good people in that space, but if you want to be great at something, you need most of your team to be above the standard. And that's where you get the discretionary effort where people go a little bit above and beyond. And I think they do that because they think you care about them, that when they need you, you're there for them. And then on the flip side, when you need them,
They'll be there.
yeah, they're there and they're willing to give a bit extra. And that's when you get the outperformance, I suppose.
And if the team's not going well, where do you go as the leader, as a leader of that team, whether it be in the past or even now, certainly in corporate? What are the things going on in your mind to turn that around?
Just clear communication, I think, and honesty. So, I'll probably drag that through from my footy days. If we had a loss or a bad loss, we didn't all go off into our rooms and hide and pretend it didn't happen. There was a very public discussion. We watched the game again, which is that doesn't lie. So if you're lying on the ground for a long time and someone runs past you, you're like, you can see it, right? And it's pretty brutal. But in a different context, it's about being honest and communicating really well. And once again, you rely on the key people in your team to help you support you through that. And if I think about our business, it's been through a huge amount of M&A activity in the last couple of years. It's not linear. There's a lot of bumps in the road for any organisation that goes through that. Multiple acquisitions. There's a lot of personalities involved in that. Some people stay, some people don't. There's all that kind of stuff, and that creates lumpiness to your culture because, really for a lot of people, our CEO always says this: if you're in a business that gets sold, you get sold, the staff gets sold, right? So the founders might make the decision to sell the business and the team gets sold to someone else, right? So that's a really important thing to consider. And, I think we're lucky that, as I said earlier, we've got a team that is really adept and dedicated to making sure integration works really well, but it's not linear. That stuff is hard and you got to keep working on it. And there is plenty of times when you've got to sit down and say, where do we go from here? What do we need to do better? How can we help? All that kind of stuff. And it's about being honest and having some humility around that too, because, if you bury your head in the sand on that stuff, it only just gets worse. So part of having good times is then going through some difficulty as well. We've all been there, and anyone who hasn't is lying, so that's part of growing a business. And I know you know that yourself. You're just telling me you've doubled or tripled the size of your team in the last couple of years, and that doesn't just go straight up in a line. No. There's plenty of adversity in that, and I guess at the end of the day, that's what makes it worthwhile. That's what makes it special, is you do go through a bit of that together.
But I found in this experience that you bring that communication, you have really open communication, and it binds the team.
Yeah,
the challenges. To say this is shit.
Yeah,
it is. Can't. You have to rewatch the footage, and there's no way around it. This is shit, and then let's work together.
Yeah,
we need to work together. Yeah, to get through this.
Yeah,
and then that almost galvanizes the team.
Yeah, yeah.
Finally, looking at your learnings from this extraordinary life and this young life you've had already. Trying to, as I said to you at the start or before we started recording, this is such a selfish act for me because I just try to pick up as many hot tips as I can implement in my own life. You mentioned your wife Courtney in three kids. How has your views of work-life balance, however you want to call that, managing all the balls in the air, how has that developed and changed over time?
It's a really good question, and I think it's one that eats away at a lot of people that are in senior leadership positions because you do get torn at times between, there's the work-life piece, and I've probably got better maybe over the last 12 months at making sure my priorities are right. I think one of the good things about my role, I'm pretty lucky because I talk to a lot of people that have to travel a lot, and I don't. We've got an office down the Gold Coast. I'm in Brisbane, so Gold Coast, and for the most part, that's the bulk of my travel requirements. Which, when I talk to some of my mates, for example, they're on planes and airports and hotels and a lot, and that takes a huge amount of time out of your.
You did that for 15 years.
Yeah, I guess so, and I'm lucky that I don't have to do too much travel as part of my role at the moment, so it's really good, and that has given me a lot more time to be able to drop the kids at school, go and watch their athletics carnivals, pick them up after, go to footy training, and I try and make sure that I give myself time to do that, and just to talk about leadership, our leaders in our business, they live that as well, so in a very open way, they're very clear about their priorities and the importance of their family and getting to their kids' activities and making sure they're present. And I think that sets the tone, doesn't it? We're actively encouraging people to go and spend time with their family. The other thing is we try not to bother people on weekends and things like that. That sometimes you creep into that space as well. So making sure we give people time to say, right, I'm with my family now and I'm going to be 100% present. I think that's something you've got to work on as a leader. You've got to actively keep focusing on the importance of that. Do we all get it right all the time? I don't think so, but at least if you're aware of it, you prioritize it, because people will tell you that it just goes so quickly and you miss stuff. So you got to be consciously aware of that.
How is your evolution, I guess, from with rugby? That is quintessentially a finite game. Simon Sinek talks about the finite game versus the infinite game, and that is like categorically we either winning, we won or we lost this actual match, versus we're all leading to this tournament versus there are dates in the calendar, and there is objectively a way to determine whether we've won that or not. Business is not like that. Business is much more of an infinite game where the goal is you might have carrots along the way and objectives, but they're your objectives. They're the business's objectives. They're not, you can't win business. Similar to you can't win marriage or parenting. It's just your job is to do it the best you possibly can. How has that shift been for you?
Yeah, it's probably easier in the previous life where you did have a scoreboard every weekend. Very easy to say whether you're doing well or not. I guess we have things like budgets that are a bit like that, I suppose, that determine that. But to a larger extent, I think you've got to have that continuous improvement sort of mindset and make sure that as a leader you're checking in on people and recognising, rewarding people continuously for good performance, or likewise if there's not good performance, you're really clear about that and you're honest about that. So to your point, like, you don't just wait till the end of the year and say, well done and here's an award. It's more like a continuous process of reinforcement, encouragement, acknowledgement, gratitude that you're trying to say to your team, you are doing a good job, rather than, end of the month, you've done a great job.
Something.
Yeah. So I guess I'm not an expert on that, but I think it's a great point that you make. And that's something I think, I'm certainly keen to learn more about. There's some parts of leadership that we know a lot about and others that we don't. That's one of the great things about it. And it's a continuous journey of reading things, listening to podcasts, observing, all that kind of stuff goes into what your leadership sort of piece looks like.
And before we get into the Fast Five, the last question I have for you is, it centers around your relationship with you, Steve, and how that has developed from schoolboy to Reds to Wallabies to marriage to kids to corporate. How has your relationship changed and developed over time, bringing in, I'm sure there's been periods of time of imposter syndrome, but how do you talk to yourself and how has that developed?
Geez, that's a complicated question, but I'll give it a go. I suppose if I think about my professional sport career, probably a lot of the time thinking are you good enough to be here, and that being a bit of a driver for how hard you work, and just that fear of failure. I know that probably sounds pretty negative, but not wanting to let your teammates down, your country down, making sure you're matching it with the best teams in the world, that drives you a little bit. You just don't want to make an error there or fall short. So I guess that was a lot of my internal, and I suppose having to move on quickly from things. It can desensitize you to that a little bit, I think, in post sport, because in sport it's high profile, it's public, it's fast. You got to move on quick from stuff, but not everyone is trained to do that. So in life after, you might think, well, I've moved on from that, but the team might not, or your family or whatever it might be might not have been able to handle that. So having an awareness of that, I think, is building that empathy, because we're just so trained to move on from stuff quick and just forget about it. Don't park it, whatever. And maybe trying to unpack that a little bit is probably something I'm just, as I mature and I get, probably take a step back a little bit and look at big picture. And I think that's some of the things that I want to try and keep working on personally is how I, stay in that moment and make sure that we deal with something in the moment, deal with is there emotions, is it good or bad, whatever that is. And rather than, for so long we were trained to just move on, park it, once you stamp your feet twice and then it's finished, that's it. So, it's just different, isn't it? So, they're one of the things where I think while there's a lot of good things to take from being an athlete professionally to life after, there's obviously some stuff that's very different, and there's no sort of blueprint for it. You got to just live it and try and work through it as it comes to you. So, and the more experience you get as a leader, the more chances you get to nail that and get that right. So, I'm trying to work on that all the time.
What motivates you now?
Probably being the best at what I can be.
The same answer you gave me is what motivated you as a footballer, which is incredible, right? That's incredible. It's like that seems to be your motto.
Yeah. I guess I didn't even think about that when I said it. It just came to me. But when I sort of try and think about what does that mean, it means just probably reaching your potential, and not being the best in terms of on the podium with a gold medal, that kind of thing. That's an outcome of that. But being the best I can be, but then if I do that, hopefully then I can help the team be the best they can be, so, and I know I can't do one without the other, so just really trying to work on that, I think.
So good, mate. And I really appreciate your time. It's been
No worries.
one of my favorites.
Thanks for having me.
Before you go, 5 fast questions. What does success mean to you?
I think it sort of reflecting on something and thinking I worked as hard as I could for that, and that got me to where I ended up.
What does happiness mean to you?
I think seeing the people around you achieve their best.
Love that.
Family or colleagues, friends.
What does a normal morning routine look like for Stephen Moore?
It's a little bit different. Probably every second day I get up early and try to go and train, do a run or some boxing or something like that. And then the other day I'm usually on duty at home, dropping kids at swimming and school and all that kind of stuff. So it's a good mix of both.
Yeah, nice. A piece of advice that you'd give to your younger self that you'd want to probably put on a billboard for the world to see?
Don't try and do everything too early. Enjoy what you do and work hard, and the rest will happen.
Love that. Finally, a guest that you think we should have on the show would be a good chat.
I was thinking about this earlier. So I'm a big Oasis fan, so probably Liam Gallagher.
All right, I love
that. Get
him
on when they're out here for their tour. I think that'd be pretty cool to watch.
All right, do we have a connection?
Might need a few more curtains on the windows, though.
Do we have a connection? You got someone? Someone
Not
who knows
quite. If I did, I'd let you know.
Stephen Moore, thank you so much, mate.
Thanks for having me.
That was another episode of the Success Times Happiness podcast. Next time you're walking out, onto the field at a World Cup final, turn to the person next to you and tell them all about the show. It really means a lot. A big thank you to Stephen for sharing his time and story with us. Definitely one of my favourite episodes in a while. If you haven't already, hit subscribe, like the episode, and share it with your friends. Thanks for listening, and until next time, peace.